Why would an actor walk away from the role he was born to play? A part so perfectly cast that when it happened, it felt inevitable. A character beloved by gamers, readers, and fans worldwide. Then, just when the momentum was high, he left. And when he left, the reaction wasn't just disappointment, it was an outrage. It felt like betrayal. But that's only the beginning of the story. Behind the announcement, behind the smiling photos and polished statements, there was tension, creative friction, a clash of values, a war over what the show should be and what the fans believed it was. Today, we're going behind the scenes of one of the biggest shakeups in streaming fantasy, the exit of Henry Cavill from The Witcher. What really happened? What was sacrificed? And why does it matter to fans everywhere? When the early reviews rolled in for the latest season of The Witcher, something snapped. Audiences didn't just wrinkle their eyebrows, they fired up petitions, memes, and hashtags in unprecedented volume. Critics that once gave the show some slack now poured language like lost its soul and unrecognizable. For a role like Geralt of Rivia, an icon in fantasy culture, this wasn't just a drop in ratings, it was a rupture. Because for many fans, Cavill was Geralt. They'd invested time, emotion, loyalty. They climbed into the show's world with him. He'd been the face, the voice, the embodiment. So when the glow started to fade, when the cracks showed, it didn't feel like a creative dip. It felt like a fracture. The question hanging over everything became why. This part of the story is often glossed over. Cavill didn't wait to be handed the role of Geralt. He chased it. As a longtime fan of the games and the books, he already felt connected to the character long before the cameras rolled. He reportedly reached out, made his interest known, and argued for authenticity. He didn't want to just play Geralt. He wanted to be Geralt. Every hardened stare, every scar, every silence between fights, he saw them as part of the package. That kind of passion comes through. The first seasons had a tone, brutal, grounded, driven by lore. Cavill brought that. He knew the world, the monsters, the stakes. And for fans, it mattered. It made all the difference between watching a show and living in a world. But with that kind of dedication comes something else. Expectation. From the actor, from the fans, and soon, from the producers. Now we head into the shadows. What was happening when the cameras were off? What the fans don't see? What the press might hint at, but never fully reveals? In the writer's room, allegedly, there were voices pushing for something lighter, more spectacle, more jokes, more TV-friendly moments. Meanwhile, Cavill and a subset of creative staff were trying to hold on to something else. The gritty moral complexity of Geralt, the weight of destiny, the darkness of the continent. Sources suggest Cavill walked onto set not just to act, but to protect. He recited lines from the original novels. He pointed out continuity issues. He corrected monster lore. One comment from Reddit: "It is widely rumored that Henry was the only person involved who knew and liked the Witcher background." That kind of devotion can create friction. When an actor becomes a watchdog, it changes dynamics. The show was no longer just production, it was personal. Instead of being celebrated, that stance can become labeled difficult. What began as dedication started to look like interference. That's where the silent war ignited. As The Witcher moved into its second and third seasons, something began to feel off. The monsters were still there. The battles still looked expensive. But the soul of the show, it was shifting. And for those who knew the books or had played the games, that shift wasn't subtle. Geralt of Rivia, once a stoic, brooding force of nature bound by a complex moral code, began to sound different. He talked more, joked more, reacted less like a haunted swordsman shaped by trauma, and more like a quippy action hero. Gone were the long, silent stares, the slow burn dilemmas, the moments that said everything without a single line. Instead, we got faster edits, more spectacle, and a version of Geralt that felt, to longtime fans, increasingly unfamiliar. And Cavill noticed. More importantly, he cared. Behind the scenes, he reportedly flagged scripts that felt off-tone. He lobbied to reinsert book-accurate scenes that had been cut. He questioned dialogue that contradicted Geralt's character arc or bent the logic of the world. And for that, he was branded difficult. To the studio, it was about modernizing the show, making it more accessible. But to Cavill, it was a betrayal, not just of Geralt, but of every fan who had connected to this world because it dared to be different. And he wasn't subtle about his frustration. In interviews, he chose his words carefully, but the tension was clear. He praised the team publicly, but always circled back to one point. Staying faithful to the source mattered. That wasn't just a preference. It was a principle. But here's the problem with principle in a corporate world. It doesn't scale well. The more Cavill pushed to preserve what made the story powerful, the more resistance he faced. Writers wanted reinvention. He wanted reverence. They wanted broad appeal. He wanted brutal honesty. And the cracks widened. Scenes were rewritten. Lore was reshaped. Canon moments were cut or reimagined to fit the pacing. Slowly but surely, the character Cavill once fought to play was being deconstructed into something safer, flashier, and emptier. One of the breaking points? Rumors claim Cavill pushed back hard against Geralt, becoming overly talkative and sarcastic, traits that undercut his legendary restraint and moral tension. Geralt doesn't talk much, because every word costs him something. Every decision weighs. Every silence speaks volumes. That's what made him fascinating. That's what made fans care. And when that depth started to fade, Cavill saw it for what it was, a warning sign. He wasn't being difficult. He was being protective of the story, the fans, and a role he dreamed of long before Netflix ever picked up the phone. But by that point, the writing was on the wall. The show was no longer being made for the fans who had loved it from the start. It was being made for a broader algorithm. The soul of the series was being sacrificed on the altar of mass appeal. And for Cavill, that wasn't just disappointing, it was unacceptable. So when the choice came to stay and compromise, or walk away and stay true to what he believed, he walked. Because sometimes, the quietest decisions make the loudest statements. October 2022, the announcement broke. Cavill would no longer play Geralt. Suddenly, conversations flooded everywhere. Why? For what? Are we watching the same show? He posted, "My journey as Geralt of Rivia has been filled with both monsters and adventures. And alas, I will be laying down my medallion and my swords for Season 4. In his stead, Liam Hemsworth. Fans reacted, not just with disappointment, but with anger, a petulant kind of hurt, not because the actor changed, but because the world they loved felt like it was being handed to someone else. The studio called it creative transition, but for many, that phrasing felt like spun PR, because what it looked like was the flashpoint of loyalty versus business. The fans' loyalty, the actors' loyalty, the show's identity. They all seemed at odds. And when a franchise built on passion makes that kind of pivot, it doesn't just lose an actor, it loses trust. This is the moment most glossed over, but it's the heart of the story. Cavill didn't just leave. He made a statement. He chose to step away, not because he couldn't keep up, but because he refused to keep quiet. He left not in defeat, but in protest. Because if Geralt becomes a caricature, if the soul of the show is traded for algorithms, then what is being done is no longer the story fans signed up for. He walked away before the character he loved became unrecognizable. That matters. Because in Hollywood, walking away while you're still wanted is rare. It's risky. It's bold. And for fans who value authenticity, it sends a message. Some things matter more than money, more than fame, more even than a legacy. You might think this is just a showbiz story, but it's much more. It's a case study in how passion gets diluted by process. It's about trust. It's about the moment when art becomes a product. Franchises like this, The Witcher, Star Wars, Avengers, they all start as love letters. Then, boardrooms smell money. Risk is quantified. Creativity gets shuffled. And fans, the people who made it real, feel like collateral damage. Cavill's exit is a smaller battle in that larger war. He might not be the last, but he's one of the most visible. And when someone so passionately associated with a role walks away, and loudly so, it forces a question. At what point do we stop watching what we love because we don't recognize it anymore? When studios chase clicks instead of character, when story becomes spectacle, when loyalty becomes license, then the cost is more than ratings. It's emotional. It's cultural. Henry Cavill didn't quit. He didn't walk off angry or embittered. He just stepped aside. And in doing so, he left behind a legacy built not just of sword fights and monsters, but of belief. He reminded us that characters matter, those stories matter, that fans matter, and above all, that staying true is not a weakness. When the system favors content over connection, when algorithm beats artistry, people like Cavill stand out. Years from now, they won't remember the actor who replaced him. They'll remember the one who upended the script just by walking away, because he didn't leave the role. He left a mark.